These findings are insane. But why was this never released?
If this ever reaches the public,
We won't just lose billions, Nye. We'll lose everything we control. Just erase it.
I'm almost there. The world must see this.
Friends, we are revealing something really incredible in this video. Something life-changing for us all.
For a long time, we have been told by the mainstream media that saturated fats in foods like red meat, butter, and dairy are dangerous for our heart health and wellness. During this dark era, big food manufacturers have flooded our grocery store shelves with harmful ultra-processed foods, including industrially processed seed oils and a variety of other unhealthy fats. We have been made to believe that these artificial products are much better than natural fats, and they would result in a better heart and overall health.
Healthy for your heart. Blue Band margarine.
Far from truth and reality, many of these claims were backed by corporate-funded studies, promoted through expensive ad campaigns, and endorsed by mainstream nutritional authorities. However, recently, 3 long-suppressed pieces of research have revealed a startling truth, totally shattering the false narrative fed to us for so long. Although started with a different intent, these investigations not only demonstrate something extraordinary about saturated fats and the risk to heart health, but also reveal something absolutely menacing about the supposedly heart-healthy, industrially prepared foods and fats. So, the point here is, what did these long-suppressed studies actually reveal? Who kept them hidden for such a long period of time? And most importantly, how does this discovery point us toward a unique path of addressing some of the most dreaded diseases in modern healthcare? Let's find out.
Well, the story is really interesting and it goes a long way back, starting almost 70 years ago.
Decades ago, in the mid-20th century, Ancel Keys, an American physiologist, launched his 7-countries study claiming to demonstrate a direct correlation between saturated fat consumption and heart disease. He publicized his data aggressively, and it soon became the basis for national dietary guidelines that urged the public to cut back on meat and animal fats. However, it later emerged that Keys had selectively excluded data from countries that ate large amounts of saturated fats, yet exhibited low rates of heart disease. Nevertheless, government recommendations pivoted toward discouraging animal fats and encouraging processed vegetable oils, initially introduced under brands like Wesson oil and Minnisota corn oil. Soon, Crisco vegetable shortening, originally created by Procter & Gamble, was marketed as a brilliant innovation, and margarine brands like Blue Bonnet and Parquet replaced our traditional butter in countless households. In many ways, this transformation created fertile ground for the big food corporations to churn out cheaper, plant-based oils at scale, while proclaiming that these new products were the genuine protectors of cardiovascular health and longevity. And not just this, Big Pharma also largely benefited from this radical shift in our dietary guidelines. As people consumed more seed oils, refined carbs, and sugar-laden processed foods, various chronic conditions, including type 2 diabetes, cancer, obesity, and heart disease soared to unprecedented levels. And instead of challenging the industrial food supply, mainstream medicine largely responded by prescribing cholesterol-lowering statins, blood pressure medications, and meds for type 2 diabetes. Over time, the sum of these interventions have become a trillion-dollar ecosystem, subsidized by a belief that saturated fats are the fundamental enemy of us all. Now, within this convoluted landscape, 3 suppressed research studies have surfaced, changing the whole narrative about our heart health. Each study, in its own way, strongly demonstrates that what we have been long told about heart disease and the danger of animal fats is far from the truth and reality.
Moving ahead, let's have a look at the unbelievable findings of these 3 landmark studies, followed by the most crucial portion of this video.
The first hidden investigation, kept from us for a long time, is the Sydney Diet Heart Study. Many of us just don't know about this. The Sydney Diet Heart Study was conducted in Australia between 1966 and 1973, led by a team of researchers under the guidance of Professor Basil S. Hetzel and his colleagues. Basil Hetzel was well known for his work on iodine deficiency and public health, but he also had a deep interest in the emerging narrative around dietary fats and their role in heart disease. Though Dr. Hetzel and his associates carried out a thorough clinical trial, they could not have anticipated just how controversial or threatening their results would be to the prevailing anti-saturated fat narrative. The study specifically enrolled 458 middle-aged men, aged mostly between 30 and 59, all of whom had existing heart disease or were at high risk for developing it. By focusing on men who already had cardiovascular concerns, the researchers aimed to see if dietary modifications could prevent further cardiac events, lower mortality, or improve quality of life. Participants were divided into two main groups. One group maintained their typical Australian diet, which included notable amounts of butter, red meat, and other saturated fats, common dietary norms at the time. The second group replaced a large portion of these animal fats with safflower oil and safflower-based margarine, a product type not unlike many heart-healthy vegetable oil margarines that were being promoted in the market. The scientists, reflecting the mainstream assumptions of the era, hypothesized that the group consuming safflower-based polyunsaturated fats would have fewer heart failures and a lower overall mortality rate, primarily by virtue of lowering their serum cholesterol. The powerful assumption at work was that lower cholesterol equaled fewer heart complications and fewer fatalities. This line of reasoning mirrored the official stance in many Western countries that saturated fats needed to be minimized for good heart health. Once the trial concluded and the data was rigorously analyzed, the results proved startling. The participants who consumed higher quantities of safflower oil and safflower-based margarine did, indeed, show a notable reduction in total cholesterol. However, and this is the crucial part, these same individuals experienced a significantly higher rate of fatality, both from cardiovascular causes and from all causes combined, compared to the group that stuck to butter, meat, and other saturated fats. The conclusion upended everything the researchers had expected to find. Faced with these unexpected outcomes, the study team initially wrote up some of their findings, but never fully emphasized the surprising mortality data. As more influential voices in the medical community continued to promote seed oils, the raw data of the Sydney Diet Heart Study quietly receded into obscurity. When the full study was finally reanalyzed and published decades later, it offered irrefutable evidence that while polyunsaturated seed oils can indeed lower cholesterol, they do not necessarily lower the risk of fatality. In fact, they might do the opposite. This revelation was so damaging to the widely held heart-healthy brand image of safflower oils and other vegetable oils that it was little wonder the data remained in the shadows for so long.
Moving ahead, the second suppressed investigation is the Minnesota Coronary experiment.
Now this is even more interesting. Shortly after the Sydney Diet Heart Study began, another large-scale investigation got underway in the United States, the Minnesota Coronary experiment. This trial, led primarily by Dr. Ivan France Jr. and his team at the University of Minnesota, set an even more ambitious goal: to prove that replacing saturated fats with vegetable oils, in this case corn oil and corn oil-based margarine, would reduce heart disease and mortality. Also involved in the conceptual framework of this trial was Dr. Ansel Keys himself, who was a significant influence in the nutritional science arena of that era. What made the Minnesota Coronary experiment uniquely powerful was its large and highly controlled environment. The study involved more than 9,000 participants, recruited chiefly from state mental hospitals and nursing homes, where every aspect of their diet could be meticulously managed. This approach allowed the researchers to precisely measure the types and amounts of fats being consumed, ensuring a rare degree of accuracy for a nutrition trial. One group continued to consume their regular diet, containing butter, red meat, and other animal-based fats. The other group was instructed to replace a significant portion of those saturated fats with corn oil and corn oil margarine, products akin to the Wesson and Minnisota brand oils that were simultaneously making their way into millions of American kitchens. Given the massive funding and the fervent belief among the researchers and their sponsors that lowering serum cholesterol was the key to reducing heart disease, the Minnisota Coronary experiment was presumed to deliver an incontrovertible endorsement of polyunsaturated vegetable oils. Cholesterol measurements in participants were diligently recorded. Indeed, the group consuming corn oil-based margarines experienced a significant decline in their cholesterol levels, reinforcing the common notion that lowering cholesterol should be beneficial. But when researchers began analyzing mortality rates, the data contradicted the expected narrative even more dramatically than in the Sydney Diet Heart study. Those who consumed more corn oil, and correspondingly less saturated fat, faced higher mortality rates, including from heart disease. Even more unsettling was the finding that for approximately every 30 mg per deciliter reduction in serum cholesterol, the risk of fatality increased by about 22%. This was the polar opposite of what the mainstream believed. The study should have rung alarm bells across the medical world, prompting immediate reevaluation of the anti-saturated fat campaign. Instead, Dr. Ivan France and his colleagues never fully publicized these results in peer-reviewed journals or major conferences. The raw data languished for decades, tucked away where they would not disrupt the profitable new market for polyunsaturated oils. Only in 2016 did independent researchers, revisiting the archived records, reveal the previously suppressed outcomes. Had these results been widely shared at the time, the entire shift away from butter and animal fats might have been slowed or reversed, and the public might have been spared decades of misinformation that championed products like corn oil, certain margarines, and refined seed oils as inherently heart protective. But the fact is that these big corporations just thrive on our poor health and illness.
Now, the third major piece of evidence we have is far more modern, the 2022 burden of proof analysis.
Fast forward into the 21st century, when a new wave of research started scrutinizing older assumptions about meat, cholesterol, and heart disease. The so-called burden of proof analysis from 2022 was a large-scale re-examination of the supposed risks tied to eating unprocessed red meat. At the forefront were scientists using advanced statistical methods and updated nutritional data sets, free from many of the confounding variables and biased questionnaires that plagued earlier epidemiological studies. Some key individuals from global health institutes, such as the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, were involved, though the study itself encompassed an extensive network of dietary researchers. Rather than a single trial, this was more of a comprehensive meta-analysis and risk assessment, sifting through large cohorts from different regions of the world. The participants were millions of ordinary people, tracked over varying timescales, allowing the authors to separate the effects of red meat consumption from factors like smoking, sedentary lifestyles, and coexisting metabolic diseases. In other words, the 2022 burden of proof analysis tried to isolate red meat as a variable in predicting heart disease, cancer, and mortality, putting aside spurious correlations that might arise from unaccounted factors. Contrary to mainstream warnings, the final analysis concluded that there was no strong evidence linking unprocessed red meat consumption to heightened risks of heart disease, cancer, or early mortality. In many subsets, once lifestyle confounders were filtered out, those who regularly ate nutrient-dense animal foods scored favorably on health markers. The authors concluded that prior attempts to cast red meat as a direct cause of these diseases were based on incomplete or flawed data. This echoed the revelations from the Sydney Diet Heart study and the Minnisota Coronary experiment by underscoring that blindly chasing lower cholesterol via certain dietary changes, or demonizing saturated fats, was scientifically shaky all along. Viewed together, these three studies paint a coherent, if unsettling, narrative. Many widely promoted heart-healthy diets, reliant on vegetable oils, not only fail to improve longevity, but might actively raise the risk of death.
Friends, before we move ahead to the most crucial section of this video, we would like to know, which diet plan are you following? Keto, carnivore, or some other? And how has been your experience so far? Do share in the comments, and we would request you to subscribe to our channel, helping us spread this vital info further.
Now, with these studies finally seeing the light of day, it is more pertinent than ever to examine how a drastically different diet, one that embraces saturated fats and excludes much of the carbohydrate load typical of modern food supplies, radically improve human health. That is precisely where we turn next, to the synergy of the carnivore diet, which leverages two crucial components. First, the inclusion of an abundance of nutrient-dense animal foods loaded with essential amino acids, stable fats, fat-soluble vitamins, and highly bioavailable minerals. Second, elimination of harmful or inflammatory carbohydrates, highly refined seed oils, and other substances that upregulate insulin, spur chronic inflammation, and erode metabolic stability. With this two-pronged approach in mind, let us explore the 9 most dreadful, untreatable diseases that are widely reported to improve or resolve under a strict, all-animal fat carnivore diet.
We recommend that you watch this portion with all your attention, as this information is not commonly available on any of the major social media platforms.
Starting off, disease number 1, cancer. Cancer is arguably the most dreaded disease in modern times, with varying forms that can afflict virtually any organ system. Over decades, the mainstream approach has largely relied on chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, with dietary guidelines often playing only a supportive role. However, an increasing body of evidence highlights the metabolic vulnerabilities of many cancer cells, particularly their reliance on glucose for energy via the Warburg effect. By severely restricting carbohydrates, the carnivore diet starves cancer cells of their preferred fuel source, thereby slowing tumor growth or enhancing the impact of certain treatments. Simultaneously, high-quality animal proteins deliver essential amino acids for tissue repair, immune function, and other key physiological processes. Additionally, red meat and organ meats supply micronutrients like zinc, selenium, and vitamin B12, which bolster the immune system's ability to conduct vigilant surveillance against cancerous cells. Eliminating sugar and refined carbs also lowers insulin levels, thus mitigating insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1, pathways that can accelerate cancer cell proliferation. While it is crucial to note that nutritional therapy should not be viewed as a standalone cure for cancer, there are multiple documented cases where patients have stabilized or significantly slowed tumor progression using a low-carb or carnivore approach, often experiencing fewer treatment side effects in the process. Next up, disease number 2, type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, once seen as an irreversible condition requiring lifelong medication, is increasingly recognized as a disease rooted in insulin resistance, a state perpetuated by frequent consumption of high-carbohydrate foods and prolonged periods of elevated blood sugar. On a standard Western diet, people regularly spike their insulin through cereals, breads, sugary beverages, and hidden sugars in processed products. The result is that over time, the pancreas is forced to produce more and more insulin until it can no longer keep up, paving the way for chronically high glucose levels, diabetic complications, and the routine prescription of insulin injections or oral hypoglycemics. The carnivore diet tackles type 2 diabetes on both fronts. By relying on near-zero carbohydrates, it drastically reduces the burden on the pancreas, allowing blood sugar levels to remain stable throughout the day with minimal insulin production. Red meat and butter provide ample calories from fat, which do not impact insulin the way carbohydrates do. Meanwhile, the high amino acid content in protein supports muscle mass, preserving or improving metabolic health. As a result, many people see their hemoglobin A1C, a long-term marker of glucose control, drop into healthy ranges after adopting a strict carnivore approach. Some can reduce or altogether discontinue their insulin therapy, indicating a reversal, rather than mere management, of their diabetic state. Moving ahead, number 3, Heart disease. Heart disease remains one of the top causes of mortality worldwide, and saturated fat has frequently been cast as the main culprit. Yet the buried data from the Minnesota Coronary experiment and the Sydney Diet Heart Study show that attempts to lower cholesterol via seed oils did not save lives. Instead, heart disease risk appears more strongly linked to chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, and the oxidation of certain lipoproteins. The carnivore diet can improve these metrics by removing the pro-inflammatory trifecta of excessive sugar, refined carbs, and seed oils. Simultaneously, nutrient-rich animal foods, especially ruminant meats like beef and lamb, supply beneficial compounds such as carnitine and coenzyme Q10, which support cardiac function. Butter provides a stable saturated fat that can help enhance the body's ratio of protective HDL cholesterol while also furnishing fat-soluble vitamins necessary for vascular health. Although many conventional cardiologists still cling to the notion that any rise in LDL cholesterol is dangerous, it is becoming clear from further research that LDL particle subtypes and systemic inflammation are more relevant than total LDL alone. Under a carnivore diet, many individuals see improved triglyceride levels, better blood pressure control, and less reliance on medications like statins. By combining the beneficial nutrients in animal foods with the elimination of high glycemic foods and industrial oils, heart function is often supported rather than harmed, challenging the decades-long presumption that saturated fats automatically clog arteries.
The next 3 diseases we are going to discuss are the most crucial ones in our opinion.
Moving on to disease number 4, chronic digestive disorders. A dysfunctional gut can undermine the entire body, causing everything from malnutrition to crippling pain and constant inflammation. Conventional wisdom often prescribes a high-fiber regimen involving whole grains, fruits, and vegetables for such conditions. Yet for many patients with severe irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis, constant fiber can inflame the gut lining or cause excessive fermentation, gas, and discomfort. The carnivore diet, meanwhile, provides a respite from plant-based irritants, like lectins and phytates, and excessive fiber. By removing these aggravators, the gut lining has a chance to repair itself. The high-quality protein in red meat supports the maintenance and regeneration of the epithelial barrier. Furthermore, the near-total absence of simple carbohydrates denies pathogenic gut bacteria their primary fuel source, potentially restoring a healthier microbial balance. The synergy is profound. Numerous testimonials report major improvements or complete remission in conditions like Crohn's or severe IBS after just a few months of strictly adhering to a carnivorous regimen. This synergy arises because not only do patients gain robust nutritional support from meat and butter, they also sidestep the triggers that have historically proven intractable for their inflamed bowels. At number 5, we have mental health conditions. Mental health struggles such as depression and anxiety may seem far removed from one's choice of dietary fats, but the link between these conditions and metabolic health is substantial. Carbohydrate-heavy diets can induce fluctuations in blood sugar and insulin, which in turn can wreak havoc on mood stability. Additionally, chronic inflammation in the body can translate to neuroinflammation, disrupting the synthesis and regulation of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. The carnivore diet addresses both these issues by removing excess carbs, allowing for stable blood sugar, and by eliminating seed oils, which reduce the overall inflammatory load. Meanwhile, red meat and eggs supply critical nutrients needed for optimal brain function, including B vitamins, such as B12 and folate, iron, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids, especially if ruminants are grass-fed or if the diet includes fatty fish, and choline. Butter also contains naturally occurring butyrate analogs that can help maintain a healthier gut-brain axis. Taken together, many individuals note that symptoms of depression, anxiety, or even bipolar mood swings become far more manageable, and in some cases, nearly vanish once they adopt a carnivore approach. The synergy here is clear. High-value nutrients from animal products feed the brain and stabilize energy, while the elimination of carb-induced insulin spikes in processed oils dials down the inflammatory signals that can drive mental health issues. Next up, at number 6, we have skin diseases. Psoriasis, eczema, and other chronic skin complaints can devastate self-esteem and lead to never-ending cycles of topical steroids and antibiotic lotions, none of which address core dietary causes. Skin, being an organ of both elimination and immune signaling, is highly sensitive to inflammation, insulin surges, and nutritional deficiencies. On a carnivore diet, the total removal of refined carbohydrates helps regulate insulin levels, which can reduce conditions like acne that are often exacerbated by hormonal imbalances. By avoiding seed oils and replacing them with butter and other stable animal fats, the body is less inflamed overall, and the constant presence of high-quality protein supports skin regeneration. Moreover, removing potential dietary triggers, like gluten, lectins, and fructose-laden fruits, can help calm overactive immune responses that manifest on the skin's surface. Vitamins A and D, both abundant in animal fats and organ meats, promote normal skin cell turnover and barrier function. The combined outcome is that rashes, scales, and patches often recede when carbohydrate triggers are absent, and the skin receives abundant nutritional support from healthy saturated fats and protein. Though official dermatological guidelines rarely mention the carnivore diet, countless anecdotal reports from around the globe speak volumes about rapid improvements in persistent and severe skin conditions when people fully eliminate irritant foods.
So, can you guess which are the final 3 diseases on the list? Let's find out.
Moving on, disease number 7, neurological disorders. Neurological disorders such as epilepsy, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's disease frequently involve dysfunctional glucose metabolism in the brain. Alzheimer's is sometimes referred to as type 3 diabetes because of insulin resistance observed within brain tissue. Epilepsy has a long history of positive responses to a ketogenic approach, where ketone bodies derived from dietary fat become the primary energy source for neurons. Adopting a carnivore diet can induce an even more pronounced ketogenic state, starves out excessive sugar demands, and reduces neuroinflammation, all of which may help slow cognitive decline in Alzheimer's or reduce seizure frequency in epilepsy. In Alzheimer's, early pilot studies suggest that lowering insulin levels and providing ample ketones can improve cognitive scores and daily function. Similarly, Parkinson's disease patients often report steadier energy, reduced tremors, and less symptom variability once they shift to a high-fat, low-carb approach. Additionally, the high concentration of amino acids and specific nutrients, like vitamin B12 in red meat, fosters better overall nervous system health, while removing refined carbs can mitigate inflammatory cascades that exacerbate neurodegeneration. The synergy is straightforward: stable energy supply for the brain from fat, plus the removal of excitatory blood sugar swings, combined with nutrient-dense animal foods that help maintain neural structures. Disease number 8, obesity. Obesity is not a superficial concern limited to appearance. It is a catalyst for diabetes, heart disease, joint problems, and dozens of other chronic ailments. Mainstream dietary advice often calls for portion control and calorie restriction, a strategy that can lead to misery and repeated dieting failures. A carnivore diet, however, addresses obesity by eliminating the foods most responsible for insulin spikes and addictive cravings: refined carbohydrates, sugars, and hyperpalatable processed products. Because protein and fat are inherently more satiating than carbs, many individuals spontaneously reduce their caloric intake without conscious portion control. Furthermore, stable blood glucose and the near absence of carb-induced insulin surges enable the body to tap into stored fat reserves for energy. The synergy is clear. High-quality animal proteins keep muscle mass strong and metabolic rate stable, while the elimination of high glycemic foods prevents the cyclical blood sugar crashes that drive overeating. Many men and women who once believed they were genetically destined for obesity discover that the carnivore diet allows them to finally burn excess fat consistently, often reversing associated conditions like metabolic syndrome, fatty liver disease, or severe insulin resistance. Finally, at number 9 we have autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune disorders can destroy quality of life by causing chronic pain, systemic fatigue, and organ damage as the immune system assaults the body's own tissues. Although each autoimmune condition has unique characteristics, they often share underlying triggers such as gut permeability, heightened systemic inflammation, and specific dietary antigens. The carnivore diet's extreme simplicity, the removal of grains, legumes, and most plant-derived foods, means potential irritants like gluten, lectins, oxalates, and other anti-nutrients are gone. The immune system, freed from these triggers, tends to calm down. At the same time, nutrient-dense animal fats supply beneficial fatty acids like conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, and an array of micronutrients that support normal immune function. Butter and red meat also help maintain a solid supply of fat-soluble vitamins that can modulate immune pathways. Many with rheumatoid arthritis or lupus find that within weeks, their joint pain diminishes markedly, while chronic flares become less frequent or vanish altogether. The synergy at play is again two-pronged, removing harmful compounds that exacerbate autoimmunity while boosting the body's capacity for cellular repair and immunological balance with nutrient-packed animal foods. So friends, here we have it. A very crucial piece of information related to us all. By the way, what is your opinion about the findings of the 3 suppressed studies? And how has been your experience on the carnivore diet so far? Has it been any beneficial? Which diseases have you healed so far? Do share your journey in the comments. Press the like button if you found this video helpful, and share it with your loved ones as well. Subscribe now to our channel and be a proud member of our carnivore community, helping spread this healing message further. And do you know why the new carnivore food pyramid could be banned? Watch the video showing up on the screen to find that out. See you there.